Okay, so that was more of the Kyle Rittenhouse interview with Tucker Carlson on Fox News last night. Let's bring both of our guests in now. Lisa Lockwood. She is a former law enforcement officer, a former SWAT team member, and a crime analyst. So, Lisa, I'll come to you on this. What were your feelings on the verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and the fact that he gave this wide-ranging interview to Fox News over the weekend?
Okay, so the verdict, having watched the case, probably about 80% of it, it was very lengthy over the course of those 3 weeks. And
Mhm.
seeing the footage that came forward later on and realizing after we had FBI footage, we had people who were involved in the march, we had BLM, Antifa. There was just such a variety of people who were there. And once all of that came to light, and as I said, I watched 85% of the case, I did feel that the defense met their burden to show in each instance all those cases were a matter of self-defense. So I wasn't surprised.
The officer that shot his son was not charged. Obviously, both the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, and the DA in Kenosha County declined to file charges against that officer, saying that, and I remember covering that press conference, saying that the DA said the shooting was justified, and he went through all of the factors that they have to evaluate. And Jacob Blake was armed with a knife. So what are your thoughts on Justin Blake's comments there?
Obviously, it's a father who is grieving at the fact that his son is paralyzed and was in a position that day to be caught up in a situation where he had a gun and he was violating an order of protection. So, as a parent, you're going to do everything you can to protect your child. And have there been injustices against racial injustices, according with police departments across the nation? Absolutely, and they are being addressed. In this particular case, like you, I saw the all of the footage surrounding that, also seeing that there was an attempt of him to leave and there were children in the vehicle and he did have a knife because initially they said there wasn't a knife. But 7 shots, a lot of people
Hmm.
say it's overkill, and you don't know until you're in that situation what action you need to take as a police officer.
And a lot of people went into this trial thinking this was a white supremacist, kid affiliated with these groups. And then we go into the trial, and the defense attorney says in court they gave the FBI the code to his phone. There was nothing to support this claim that he was a white supremacist. It's really kind of startling to me how we can go from that to then moving, you know, to the trial and seeing that that wasn't true, and people thought it was true for over a year.
I actually am embarrassed myself. I'm going to be the first one to say that I prejudged based on what MSM was initially putting out there. And I thought too, what an idiot. Why would somebody do this? And I wanted to know their background and, how did they get involved in this? And that surely this guy's got a criminal record. And the list goes on. I totally bought into it all. And I'm embarrassed that I did, because as we started to get more and more information coming in and I started to pay attention to what was happening and watching FBI footage and seeing that none of what I saw on the news was accurate leading up to it. I even had a case of embarrassment, like with him, not embarrassment, but I had my stepdaughter in Canada saying, how did this white nationalist who shot all these black people get off on this? And this is the news in Canada. And I was like, oh boy, so I had to educate her as well.
And Lisa, you're a former law enforcement officer, obviously, but when you're representing a client and they're already being accused of being a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a member of far-right militia groups, taking them to a bar with the Proud Boys, who were later involved in the January 6th events at the U.S. Capitol, I guess wearing the T-shirt, it said "free as F word," giving that symbol that people now say is affiliated with those groups. Just a really bad look. And somebody such as yourself sees something like that, watching this, and it just feeds that narrative.
It does. It was extremely exploitive and it was for personal gain. And what was the reason that they went there initially? Think about it, because I mean, he's got divorced parents. I don't know what their socioeconomic position is in the world, but he is somebody that needed funds for defense. And now we have somebody who's high profile and these other two attorneys who were representing him. And he probably thought he hit the lottery. Oh, I've got people who are reputable that are known in the media, and they're going to take care of me and help raise money for my defense. So he was exploited. He didn't know. And I believe, without a doubt, his mother certainly wasn't aware.
I think it's fair to point out, too, on the same day that Kyle Rittenhouse's, the verdict came down in that case, there was a case in Florida with an African-American defendant who claimed self-defense, and he was found not guilty. I think he was convicted on one charge, and that was being a felon in possession of a firearm. Lisa, what do you think about these criticisms by some people saying that, Kyle Rittenhouse is saying this case was never about race. It's not about race. But for people standing outside of the courthouse, some of the people outside of the courthouse, it was about race. In their view, they felt like this was an attack on protesters who were protesting racism.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between protesters and rioters and people who are out there committing criminal activity and arsons and batteries and thefts. The list goes on. So I think anybody who has watched this trial, if they sat and watched maybe half of the trial, they would have a better understanding of what happened. And if we were to compare apples to apples, and we had an African American who had the background that Kyle had, who was a medic, and he was going there to actually help and to serve, and was a cadet for the fire department, and the list goes on. I think if we just compared it straight up, I mean, it would definitely be in favor of what happened. It was self-defense. So I think it's good that you did bring up that there was another individual in Florida, and it was a black man, and it was self-defense, and he was, exonerated on that. So I think we just have to pay more attention. We have to watch these cases and watch these trials and reserve our judgment until we have done that.
And that was BG on the scene. You've seen his video. It captures a lot of what happened that night on Sheridan Road. So I want to bring Lisa in to talk about this. Lisa, the videos were just key. They were absolutely critical in this case. I don't know what would have come of this case had they not had the videos.
100% correct. They're the holy grail. And that's so important for law enforcement right now. Everything from surveillance footage, from businesses who have it, to what do I call it? The FBI's use the drones in the sky. It was so necessary, and that's when we love the public coming forward, videotaping the incidents, and BG on the scene for whatever reason he was doing it for himself. We also had the Daily Wire there. The list goes on, and people were giving that information and cooperating with the police as far as the investigation went, and it was so needed. It is critical. It's the holy grail in law enforcement.